Welcome to another time with the Superintendent. I'm pleased this morning to have invited to join me Mr. Phil McCarty, a Wakefield resident who has a long history of involvement in the different committees in the town of Wakefield, and this last summer volunteered to become a part of the most recent facilities task force effort. Phil has been also involved in the Finance Committee in the town of Wakefield for a number of years and was one of the original people to set up the Wakefield Educational Foundation. So welcome this morning, Mr. McCarty, and I have a number of questions for you and would ask that you help us better understand some of the issues around the facilities plan that we will present to the community on November 7th. I think, first of all, it might be useful if you could give us a little history of finances in the town for, say, the last 5 to 10 years. How's the town doing?
5 to 10 years is a good cycle to use as far as town finances is concerned, mainly because of Proposition 2.5. When Proposition 2.5 hit, I don't think that we really felt the impact of it for a number of years afterwards. At the time when Proposition 2.5 hit, industry in Massachusetts did very, very well until about 1988 when there was a recession. We got helped out by the state by funding from the cherry sheet. In 1988, however, the state had some severe problems, and they cut back all of the cities and towns a considerable amount of money. That amounted to about $2.5 million from our budgeting process.
Oh, that's a lot.
And yeah, that not only was not $2.5 million from the year of 1988, but in 1989 it wasn't there, in 1990 it wasn't there, and every year thereafter. What we had to do in the town was to cut back pretty heavily, and we took about 5 years to try and do that. And as you recall, I think you find that the Finance Committee was hitting the town pretty hard, saying, there isn't any money, we can't fund anything, we can't do this capital project, we can't expand here. So after maybe about 1993 or 1994, we got back to a level where we should have been. And now it's time to make up for some of the things that we had to scrimp on, and that was the capital outlay. I think that what we did in the process was also to form the Capital Outlay Committee. And the Capital Outlay Committee, who was headed by Bill Kilmartin, who's now on the Finance Committee, set up all of the different areas that they felt needed to be done in the town for capital expenditures. At the same time, we reinstituted the stabilization fund, and we started to put money into the stabilization fund. Consider the stabilization fund as a bank account.
Sure.
And now that has about $2.5 million. So that's what's happened to us as far as finances is concerned relative to this project, I think.
Good. Certainly, as we've worked on the latest Facilities Task Force report, you volunteered for that committee, and you were quickly volunteered to chair the Ways and Means Committee to help us find a way to accomplish the building of a new school on the Dahlberg site under Proposition 2.5. In dealing with the community and surveying the community, it was quite clear that the community wanted us to do everything we could to implement the facilities plan under Proposition 2.5. How do you see that we're going to be able to do that under 2.5, Bill?
Well, as you recall, we set up the debt exclusion, or the Capital Outlay Committee, presented the debt exclusion to the town. That was a pretty massive project, and the town stepped back and said, no, we're not going to do all of that now. So after that, the Finance Committee and other people also set about to find out how we could do this under 2.5. I think that the way this is coming about, and I guess maybe I should regress and just tell you that when you said that I chaired the Ways and Means Committee, the Ways and Means Committee had on it Stephen Majeski and Bill Scully and myself, but we also used other people from the town. We used Tom Goodwin, who's the chairman of the Finance Committee. We used Roy Evans, who's been on the Finance Committee some time. We used Al Palmerino, who's been on the Finance Committee and is the liaison to the school.
Sure.
and we used Bill Comartin, who was on the Capital Outlay Committee. So when we sat down in the morning in your office and we had a few meetings in there, there were a lot of ideas that were thrown around. And the finance portion of this project did have to wait until the Capital Means Committee came up with their plan. The long-range plan committee said, this is the school that we want to do. When that all came together, I think the ideas that came out of that committee really formed this plan that we've put together. And the plan was to use, or is, to use the stabilization fund as a bank account. The stabilization fund, which has over $2 billion in it right now, grows at the rate of 5%, maybe more if we get better investment, but we're planning on 5%. So that becomes a significant increase in the process. At the same time, last year we put $200,000 into the stabilization fund, and we've committed to put that amount in each year. What we are asking for is a $50,000 addition to that each year for the next 10 years, so that we can take that out of growth. And growth in the town is probably $800,000 to $900,000 a year or something like that. So what we're trying to do is to set up a plan that doesn't impact other departments. And I think that's what we've done. We've run this plan out against a 20-year forecast. It doesn't appear that we're impacting other departments. I think what we're setting up is a town building fund that can take its place as it should be in our budgeting process.
You said a town building fund.
Yes.
Again, this isn't just a school building fund.
No.
It can be really, if properly managed, can be a town building fund.
That's correct.
You're convinced of that?
Yes,
right?
I am, and we are so convinced of this that what we've done is we've asked for the library bonding project to be the first thing in the funds, not the schools. As you recall, we set up the library to take that within 2.5 so that it did not increase our taxes. The priorities that we set up were that the Capital Outlay Committee had to say, this is the top priority. It had to be a demonstrated need. It had to have plans and specifications, and it had to have outside support. And the library had all of those things, so we took that on. Now what we're saying is we want to take the library out of the budgeting process and put it into this town building fund. And when I say that, is that the funds to pay the bonds are not going to come out of the budgeting process. They're going to come out of this town building fund. So yes, this is a town building fund.
The last go-around, the town expressed quite a bit of concern about the future direction of the School Building Assistance Bureau and the state support. As you know, we were in the last year of that legislation, so there was some question of whether that legislation would be reauthorized. Would you share with us perhaps what you think has happened since with that legislation that gives support to this plan as well?
Right. And as I said before, one of the priorities for a building project is that there be outside assistance there. And the SBAB, School Building Assistance Bureau, has been with us since 1948. It has been reinstituted time and time again. It's a program which I think politically all of the legislators like. I think the towns like it. I think people feel it's a good use for our state tax money to help in a building project of the towns. Just recently, the SBAB has extended the program again yet another 5 years. They've added a little plaudit to it that says that you can take a bridge loan on your funding for your bond for 5 years, not 2 years, and we'll get into that explanation, I think, a little bit later. I might be a little bit ahead of myself. But yes, the SBAB is a program which has been with us for a number of years. We've used it in the town of Wakefield, I think, for 3 buildings. We haven't built a building at least since 1950 without it. Other towns are using it, and they're going on at the rate of 90 a year, I think, right now.
Yeah, and that legislation certainly cemented the 64% reimbursement to the town,
Yes.
not only for the capital cost, but for the interest, the financing cost. So the community does stand to get that 64%. On November 7th, we'll also ask the community to consider the planning of a second school on the Woodville site. Can you talk with us about maybe some of the advantages of doing that planning now?
Yes. It revolves around the SBAB assistance, and that 64% of all of the costs is critical to our project. What we'll want to do is to start with the Dahlberg School and to have that put up before town meeting. We will use anticipation notes to borrow the money for the plans and specifications for the Dahlberg School. We'll then go into a bridge loan and start construction. 5 years down the line, the SBAB will then fund the Dahlberg School. If we wait until we finish the Dahlberg School and until we get the funds for 5 years down the line to put the Woodville School on the list, it's liable to be another 10 years before we get the funding for the Woodville School. So the thinking here is to go for the plans and specifications of the Woodville School right now, get it on the list in June with the Dahlberg School, and then have a caveat that says the town can stop construction or not begin construction until such time as the funding for the Woodville School shows up.
Is assured. Yeah.
Is assured. So that's the way that we would anticipate that we should do that.
So the major issue then in planning for the second school is to keep and contain the timeline so that we don't make this a 30-year plan. We've
That's
already
correct.
made it a 20-year plan.
Yes.
But we're trying to get head up on the second project so we can move ahead. Specifically, when the state money flows, we can begin construction of the second school.
Correct.
How do you see the town, this plan fitting with other town needs, Mr. McCarty?
I see this as I'm really excited about this because this plan looks like it fits into the town budgeting process. This isn't a school building plan. This is a town building plan. And we happen to be following some priorities for the Capital Outlay Committee, which includes the Dahlberg and the Woodville School after the library. But the town has an awful lot of other needs in the police and the fire and areas like that. I think what we've got to do is we've got to start this project under 2.5. We have to demonstrate that we can build buildings without increasing the taxes for people. I think we have to let people know, or let people see what happens, and then watch for the reaction.
You're also a member of the Town Finance Committee, and I know they've deliberated this issue quite thoroughly after meeting with Mr. Scully and myself and others. What was their position on this particular plan?
At the last meeting, the Finance Committee unanimously approved the plan for the Woodville School, and went with the exception of one vote for the Dahlberg School and also for the Woodville School. The Town Finance Committee exercised this plan strenuously, I want to tell you, because the list of people that I told you about that was on this committee exercised this against a 20-year forecast. And we came out with winning colors, and the Finance Committee has given it its approval.
As our time winds down this morning, Mr. McCarty, certainly I want to thank you for joining us. Any kind of last words of wisdom that you'd like to offer to the community as they consider this very important thing, not only for the education of the children, but for the general quality of life of this community?
I just think that this is a plan that we really should get on board and examine and go ahead with. I think that it's a plan that starts out to be a plan that we can do within 2.5. We are not going to increase our real estate taxes. We're going to get 3 new buildings out of this plan. And I think that once we see what's going on, and if you look at the stabilization plan, if you'll come to the meeting on November 7th, I'll show you some figures that show you the stabilization plan increasing in the amount that's in there as we build the buildings, which means that we can continue on and do more buildings, more schools. We can look at the Greenwood School. We can look at other town buildings. But yes.
Well, again, thank you, Mr. McCarty, for joining us and for all the time and energy you've put into this plan. You're certainly a wonderful community citizen, and we appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.